It is a pleasure being back here with you in this really critically important work. And as I was thinking about faith and advocacy and reflecting on it, I came across Stephen Wise. There's a Stephen Wise who's a rabbi, there's Stephen Wise who's a legal scholar. This Stephen Wise jumped up at me because he said, justice shalt thou pursue is not about what we think it is about. He really challenged that that's really not about justice as we pursue it. In a narrow sense, it was urging the community to find judges who would help litigate. So he challenges this admonition that we all embrace and put on our posters and share with our congregations. I would say we should still, we take that and we pursue it in the way that we hold dear and find important. Throughout the Jewish tradition, through the Torah and the Talmud, if we look for those foundations that provide us that spirit to do what we all have been talking about this morning, Marilyn and Dr. Mason, what we are really coming together about, and that's what gives us the power, right, to make change. And those foundations from our Christian and Muslim and Jewish and other traditions give us that food and fuel to help us go forward. And so I did want to share some from our tradition because as I was taught from an early age, we hear the voices of the prophets in our head. To be engaged as we discuss it in Tikkun Olam, which is to repair the world. Now, one of my rabbis really challenges that too. He said, repair the world assumes that it was once whole and it's broken and we have to fix it again. And we would say we are in a continual process of creating justice in a way that we haven't experienced. Another colleague and friend of mine, Rabbi Sidney Schwartz, in a powerful way shared something that I want to share with you. And he says that the first purpose of being Jewish is based on Genesis chapter 18, when God expands on the initial charge to Abraham to go forth from his land to the land that God will show him, and there make Abraham into a great nation. And in Genesis verse 18-19, God adds a critical prerequisite that will enable Abraham to fulfill his destiny. He is to obey God's commandments and extend the boundaries of righteousness and justice in the world. And the second purpose of why be Jewish in our tradition is based on God's revelation to Moses, which is recounted in Exodus. The Jewish people are told to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Why be Jewish? Because it's a heritage that extends the boundaries of righteousness and justice in the world and invests our world with holiness. And so much in all of our traditions speaks to justice. And I think just one of the favorite times of our family's gathering in our tradition is around Passover. And Isaiah speaks to fasting, and Passover is a time when we gather and we eat, and we celebrate that gathering together. But Isaiah speaks to the fast, and that is not the fast that I desire, the unlocking of the chains of wickedness, the loosening of exploitation, the freeing of the oppressed, the breaking of the yoke of servitude. So much of our lives and our traditions speak to us, give us that fuel. So justice, justice shalt thou pursue is at the core of what we do, but we can't just get there. As Marilyn shared, we have to get there in a way that we come together, that we organize, and that we advocate. And in all of our traditions, there's that spirit that says we see an injustice, and we can't just wish it not to be there. We have to organize for food. We have to organize for health. We have to organize for community. And we have a lot to learn from. I remember growing up in the 50s and the 60s, Dr. King came to my town. And when he came to visit Chicago or live in Chicago, he went around to some of the villages. And one of my first most meaningful spiritual times was standing on this village green in my community and hearing Dr. King speak about justice and planting that seed. And that's our opportunity, that's our responsibility as people of faith to plant those seeds of justice, those visions of tackling unjust power and creating our vision of power, which means justice for all. We have much to go on, even in Chicago, this great city of organizing. Out of the Civil Rights Movement, there was the Interreligious Council on Urban Affairs. Through our own work and experience, there have been so many times when our faith traditions have come together. In the last 10 years, the Jewish-Muslim Community Building Initiative has tackled issues of housing, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism, and we do it together, and we do it together most powerfully. The Justice Coalition of Greater Chicago was a coming together of organizations and faith traditions, and we can look on and on. In the current move to achieve comprehensive immigration reform, we're going to get there. And we're going to get there because the faith traditions, as well as the communities at large, are saying this is the time and we will not stop. And it is that power, that ability to look beyond what seems to be unmovable, gives us that ability to move. So I want to end on the notion that justice shall we pursue.
Amen. Amen.